Installment of Chess and Books with Fred Wilson. Tonight, Tuesday evening, February 7th, 2006. My guest will be the well-known and very popular American international master, author, and teacher, Jeremy Silman. I think Jeremy has perhaps written the single one book which has most affected average players and the advanced beginners through intermediate players, affected them in a positive way, almost as much as the great logical chess move by Irving Chernev, and that is Jeremy Silman's How to Reassess Your Chess, third expanded edition. So many people have told me that they've gotten a lot out of that book and it helped them move on to another level. So Jeremy will be my guest tonight, and if you haven't checked the website, Jeremy also, besides talking about the state of the chess world, the upcoming U.S. Championship, and many other things, and answering your questions, he wants to talk about his forthcoming Silman's Complete Endgame course from beginner to master. This is a book he's been working on for several years. He's very enthusiastic about. Wants to describe roughly how it's unique in its approach to teaching endgame play and endgame theory to the novice. And I'm actually very much looking forward to being able to get a copy of this book and almost certainly want to recommend it to my students, both adults and those children that are willing to actually read and study a little bit. Hi, folks. Fred Wilson here with Jeremy Silman. Jeremy, thanks for appearing on my show again.
Pleasure to be here.
Jeremy, there's so many things that we'd like to ask you, and got a lot of email questions for you, but let's begin with something I think is fairly exciting, that you actually have just about finished Silman's Complete Endgame course from beginner to master, and that it will be printed and available, I guess, within a few months. Could you talk about that? And I know this is a long-term project of yours, like how to make endgames accessible to the advanced beginner through the average player.
Yeah, unfortunately, like everything I do, it takes forever. One author told me his best book written in 24 hours. It seems like it takes years. I wish I could be faster. But anyway, this thing is done. It just needs to be typeset. And so I'm waiting for that. And, maybe 3 months until it hits stores, of that nature. But
are you publishing this yourself? Files Press?
Files Press, yeah. I used to do things with various different publishers, and I still get offers from all the British publishers and everything. But the fact is I have more creative control with Files, and we get it into all the bookstores worldwide, and it's a better deal for me, so I do it. But,
okay.
I'll ask you about the Endgame book. Let me just say a couple things about it. It's funny because, in the old days, they always talked about Endgame books, and everybody would always say, well, there's so few Endgame books out. But now there's an enormous amount of books out. And, of course, a lot of them are excellent. But the problem is I really didn't feel – I felt something was missing. And I actually spent many, many months just thinking about it, trying to come up with something new that hadn't been done before. And the real problem to me was all these Endgame books, though they look great, I don't really think they're to anything. And it seems to be very boring. So I wanted to come up with something that was actually extremely instructive and guide people. And, it was not easy, real pain. But we'll see when it comes out. It's a bit of a panic. You never know. It's no people. So a few months away still.
I think you said that you're going to – one of the books you did many years ago, the good one of the 2 volumes, Essential Endgames Move by Move.
That was 1 volume. I didn't have nothing to do with the second.
That's what I meant. You didn't have anything to do with Volume 2 of that series. But Volume 1, what I recall is that you would take endgames that I think many masters, just forgot people didn't know how to win, where somebody would be 2 pawns up, where somebody would be a piece for 1 or 2 pawns, and you would walk people through how to win these, the material superiority ones. And I assume you're going to do that in this one too, at least at the beginning.
At the beginning, I do some stuff like that, definitely. Late in the book, it's kind of funny. I give a position of Uva's where he starts out a pawn up, and it just seems to be pretty easy. But to me, it was just showing how one calmly and to an advantage. I found it very instructive the way he did it. And Watson just went at me and made it clear that it was an awful example. And I think this is really common, where a good player like Watson looks at things as, you're a pawn up, why bother showing this stupid example? But to me, for the weaker players and for the real players, not even weaker players, I mean, this is the problem with a lot of book writers make. They look at experts and above as the real players. But the fact is, it's like 1,000, up to B. Those are the main players right there. And those people, if you're a pawn up and playing a grandmaster, you're not feeling like you're going to win easily. You're actually still terrified. So, I go into that a little bit. But the other book, Move by Move, actually I can't stand that book that I wrote. That was one of my books written on the floor with a pen, in the dim light of day. But there were some good things. I like the Move by Move thing, which helps some people. But I really don't like the book anymore. But this one will have some of that at the beginning and a lot of strange stuff that's never been done before in any. So
well, I'm glad. You might be surprised to hear that. I mean, as a bookseller, I would get asked for that first Chess Digest book, the 111 by Silman, not the other one. I get asked for that a lot. But they remember there was something somebody wrote that addressed the 1,000 player, the 1,300 player, the player who wasn't sure how to win 2 pawns up if they seemed to be kind of blockaded and blah, blah, blah. So
I do that again in this book, but with much more methods and madness. So,
the other thing, what you're saying is, oddly enough, and folks, this is absolutely true, you're repeating what I just said when I was kind of slamming John Nunn a little bit, that a lot of books seem to be, I said, it seems like Nunn and many authors are aiming their books for people 1,800 and up, as though there's some assumption that you learn how to play chess and then instantly your 1,900 strength or apprehension ability, and you're ready to look at relatively complicated stuff, like he's never seen a 1,200 rated adult. But they're the market. They're everybody, right, Jeremy?
That's just about all the market. I mean, there's a very small market for, expert above. Of course, I noticed you slammed them. I didn't. But I did agree with you on the criticism you had. But Nunn, without a doubt, is one of the great chess writers in the world today.
Never said he wasn't.
Yes, but his stuff does tend to be for more advanced players. And even when he thinks he's talking to low-rated players, he's usually not. It's very hard for a strong grandmaster to really come in contact and understand, the agonies and confusions of the average player. And I don't think they really can understand that. It's the same thing. You see that in lessons, too. Sometimes you'll come across a teacher or something who just doesn't understand why you're having trouble with elementary things. So
I think few grandmasters who can do it, or IMs like yourself, but let's say somebody like, Lev Alberts, who's been doing it for 15 years, so he gets it. He understands what they don't understand. Yet
I have almost no knowledge of Alberts. I've never looked at his books, so I
no, but he's the exception that makes your rule, but it's difficult for strong grandmasters to relate to what they don't understand positionally, tactically, strategically.
Well, it's very hard. And also, I will admit that when you're that strong, writing a book about something like that's boring, because to you it's all self-evident, so you're just sitting there regurgitating stuff that to you is trivial. So it's very difficult to write a book about those things and to even understand it. The one guy that really seems to make an effort is the British champion, Jonathan Rowson.
Ooh! How did you like Chess for Zebras?
I just reviewed it on my site. For those that don't know, I have a site, just jeremysilman.com. It's all free. Chess for Zebras, I just reviewed it. It's a fantastic book, but, I like everything he's done to me is just amazingly good. The one thing I did point out, here's a guy who says a lot of things that nobody said before, and he comes up with a lot of ideas and concepts, and sometimes you're going to end up scratching your head kind of wondering what the hell he's talking about. And I suspect that he's kind of wondering what he's talking about, too, at certain times, because he's very young and he's trying to come up with this whole new ways of thinking and whatnot. And so it's still in, kind of the beginning stage. I'm sure he's going to just make it better and better. But overall, he covers a lot of things that nobody else ever covers, and he has a lot of, even kind of in Chess for Zebras, did an amateur's mind type thing where he discusses things with students, and you get to hear the students' thoughts and his own thoughts to it. It's really excellent material. So it's, every time I see one of his books, I think Book of the Year. I mean, I love this guy's writing. So,
well, I think we completely agree about this, Jeremy. I love Chess for Zebras. I pointed out that people could actually read the book and then go back and play over the example.
Oh, it's a lot of fun just to read his stuff. You don't need any board half the time.
Absolutely, and then you can choose. Like I don't claim to have looked at every game. I looked at some of his games where the openings interested me, or that I can see from the diagrams that the positions similar to things I've had, and then I play. Well, I didn't play through every game, but I did read the entire book, and I was fascinated, and I marked it up, and I gave it a rave review about a month ago. And he's a young man. He's 28. He's got he did a 1-year master's program at Harvard, and between you and me, I think eventually he'll become an academic, even though he's still a professional grandmaster. He's British champion. But interesting thing, Jeremy, he teaches a lot. He knows the problems of understanding that the great unwashed are going through.
Yeah, actually, in my review, I pointed that out, and I said he does a lot of teaching online, and if you get the chance to get him as a teacher, you just grab it, because I can't imagine anybody better than this guy. He actually really, really cares and really tries to figure out what's wrong with you and patch you back together, and he does it in a very personal way. So I highly recommend everything about this.
Well, let's start moving to some of the email questions, because I have a pile of them, and they're quite good. Let's begin with Julian Wan, who's been a steady listener of my show since its re-beginning. Very curious about his upcoming work on Endgames. Also, will he be revising or coming out with new editions of The Amateur's Mind or Reassessing Your Chess? And finally, his biography of Benko was terrific in content and production. Has he considered other subjects like Benko?
The Benko project is a lot of fun, but it takes forever. That's almost 6 years. And you don't make any money off historic books, chess history. Even game collections don't make a lot, but when you mix history, it goes down. It's just pure books on chess history. If you break even, you're getting very lucky. So Benko, I did just as kind of a display. I wanted to show what I thought a chess biography should be. I see so many books about somebody's life and games, and usually it's just I played chess, and then I looked at a little math, and then they don't have a life. There's no life. It's just games. And it's funny, because if you look at a biography of any other area, they're talking about, not only like an actor, they're not just talking about his acting, they're talking about, his relationships and the things that interest him away from it. He has a rich life, but these books make chess players look really boring, like worse nerds than the public thinks we are. So I tried to show with the Benko book, how exciting things could be, and show, the agonies of his life and the triumphs and that sort of stuff. So, so I'm not going to do that again. The reason is you just lose a ton of money, and I just wanted to do it once, but it's just not worth it. I got a call, contacted by Mr. and Mrs. Polgar after that book, and they were interested in doing something with them. But it's just, not cost effective. It's just fun to do. The Amateur's Mind, I doubt if I'll ever do another version of that, but I'm very happy with that. I've always claimed that's the book that I've done that I'm most proud of, because I think it's the most original and the most instructive thing I've ever done.
And that still sells pretty well, right?
Still sells, yep. And Reassess Your Chess, it's funny, people don't realize, I wrote that book, there was no computers, I didn't have a typewriter, I literally wrote that, on the ground with a pen. And of course, a lot of errors and things, how can you avoid it? I'm going to completely redo it, taking about a year. There'll be at least 200 pages of new material. I'm going to gut a lot of the old examples, change the wording and just about everything else, look over the analysis. To me, computer checking everything, which I'll do, but it's not that important for this book, because what I was really interested in was sharing and conveying ideas and concepts as a team tool. The fact that Fritz might find something 12 moves down the line has nothing to do with the concept that I'm trying to instill. I mean, you can always get a book of Kasparov's games, and, one game takes 30 pages, and it's just endless analysis, but you don't learn anything. But I'm going to still fix the analysis, of course, but a lot of people complain and say, they need more analysis, but that isn't the book. So I'm going to rewrite it, and hopefully that'll appear in German as soon as that comes out. Right now, Reassess, The Amateur's Mind, and the workbook and a couple others are all in French, and they're very popular in France and Canada, and now they're going to start putting these books out in German. I think The Amateur's Mind the first of it, so I'm changing this for that.
Are you going to combine in your new edition of How to Reassess Your Chess? Will you do an edition that's combined with the Reassess Your Chess workbook, or will you revise that also?
No,
does that stand alone as something.
That stands alone, but what I am going to do is there will be a lot of examples I'm going to just tear out of Reassess, get rid of. I don't like them anymore. And so for people that enjoyed Reassess, you get to see new examples and see perhaps that I've changed some of my views or have some new ideas about how to, impart this way of thinking of it.
So we'll be looking forward to son of Reassess.
This is going to be How to Reassess Your Chess 4th, edition, but it still has a long time, at least.
No, I understand how you find we get older and we learn more. You start saying, I have a better example of this particular idea than the one I used, and then you realize, in your case, since you're the publisher, I can finally put them together and do a new edition. And
most definitely, a lot of the things a lot of people have come up with, sent me letters and asked questions about things. It gives me some new ideas about what we're actually kind of wondering about or didn't understand. So hopefully I can make it better because of the input of readers.
Oh, well, that's a great idea. I just had a discussion today with one of your fans and also Irving Chernev's fan. Chernev kind of got him up to you, and you got him up to 1900, a fellow named Dave Spiegel. And he said, what the chess instructional writers should have, the 1800 player reading the manuscript carefully, playing through the stuff, and if this guy, who's high B or barely an A player, anything he doesn't understand, I don't get what you're saying, I don't understand this, what point are you trying to make? You should listen to him. Because if he doesn't get it, how is your 1500 player going to get it?
That's totally true. By the way, that's one of the reasons I use a lot of games from low-rated players. A lot of people attack me for that. They say, why don't I only use games from world champions? But to me, those games often aren't instructive for my audience. Somebody is looking at some incredibly complex game with the first 30 or 35 moves are all, intense theory, all tactical theory, and then some incredibly, nuanced move wins the game. And what are you going to learn from that?
Some critics forget that you have to learn to crawl before you can walk. And in chess, besides basic tactics and getting comfortable looking, let's say, 3 to 5 fly, wow, even 7 fly, that concepts, A, you have to understand them, and then B, you have to understand when they don't apply. So it's such a difficult game because, there may be 7 principles are being violated and one is paramount in a given position. I think that's what makes it hard.
It's interesting. It's interesting because one of my good friends, John Watson, who I consider one of the great chess writers too, and his stuff tends to be more advanced. So we are putting out a book, a beginner's book by Watson, which I'm proofing. But the problem is he often says, well, what you're saying, you're having all these rules and stuff, and it's not really true. And he's completely right. If you look at it from the point of view of a grandmaster, using rules and this type of stuff, they just fall short at the highest level because you have to be able to go beyond all the rules. Because chess would be boring if there weren't exceptions to everything. There's no such thing as always A, B, or C. But unfortunately, the reality is for the audience, again, of the average player, or the real player, they need something to grasp onto. That's the problem. Just saying, look at this position, remember this, remember that, doesn't do anything for you. You need some things to grasp onto, and that's what I'm going to do. And to say that it's not true at the highest level, no, it's not true at the highest level, but that doesn't matter. It actually allows people to make, improve their skills and get a high rating, and then they can always go on to the more complex material once they, as you said, learn the law.
Well, it's reminiscent of what Larson wrote about Irving. He said, you have to get to a level in chess. Before you can become a master, you have to realize that everything Irving writes is a lie, which is a melodramatic, exaggerated way of saying Irving will get you up to 1800. All the rules, the principles. Then you have to start on your own and through other authors looking for the exceptions, looking to understand the paradoxes. That's the word I want. So many paradoxes in understanding a chess game. And even John Nunn pointed out his latest book, the games are messier than in understanding chess games move by move because they're his games and they just don't happen to lend themselves to a single theme that predominates throughout the game.
Yeah, his latest book is very good again. Everything Nunn does is great. I've never seen it, Pat Nunn.
You like Grandmaster Chess move by move?
Yeah, and again, for even Grandmaster Chess move by move, not for C players and B players, it's still too advanced.
Oh no, I think it's rather demanding, and he gets a little crabby right in the introduction, Jeremy. He says, in writing this book, I'm mindful of the favorable reaction to understanding chess move by move. Blah, blah. Oh no, he was talking about the complaints he was receiving. Many readers remarked of my understanding chess move by move, that despite my efforts, there was still too much analysis. I think it is worth commenting on this point a little more. General principles can be very helpful, blah, blah, blah. However, they have severe limitations, not the least because of a large number of exceptions. So annotators generally prefer to explain things in general terms, which can be very helpful, since a good general principle can be worth pages of detailed analysis. But then he goes on to say he had to put in this amount of analysis in his books, and you must learn to deal with it. I think eventually you do have to learn to deal with it if you want to become a player approaching expert strength. Otherwise, you may never, Jeremy, learn to deal with it, but still enjoy playing chess.
I don't know if you need to deal with tons of analysis if you're an A player or expert. I've known a lot of experts, 2100 players, even some masters, really don't calculate very well at all and just have good, solid understanding, play, a logical, well-rounded game. But
oh my God, who told you about me? You just described me. You just described me.
Exactly. Anyway, what he just said was kind of like a thing with Watson, because he's saying you need to have all this analysis there, and from his perspective, he's right, you need that. But again, I find it's more harmful than helpful, because first off, Watson and I agreed on something. We were talking about these books that have tons of analysis, and Watson kind of sheepishly said, well, does anybody really read all this analysis? And even the IMs and GMs don't sit there and go through all this stuff. It's too daunting. It's not that interesting to read endless analysis. So, on the other hand, so on that one level, yeah, it is nice to be there if you want to read it, but even those people don't read all that stuff. It's kind of like proving a theorem mathematically. But that's not too interesting, and again, I don't find it instructive. So I think that he's right, but I think he's wrong as far as the lower-rated players, because it not only is useless for them, but I think it actually scares you. You look at that stuff and you go, and so I think it's kind of counterproductive overall. But, a lot of people...
Well, I mean, he sells his 3,000 to 5,000 copies, which is the number he says publishers should expect. I think you would disagree with that number.
Oh, no, those are great numbers for most books.
Yeah, but not if you write the right book and put it at the right price.
No, you can obviously sell much more, but in general, chess books don't sell well at all. I mean, people seem to think if you write a book, you make a lot of money, but most people make very little. Endgame, opening books, for example, after a year, they're dead because they're already dated. As I said, history books, stuff like that, there's only a limited audience for those people. Sometimes you're just going to sell 500 copies of a book like that. Sometimes even less, believe it or not. If you sell 1,000 or 1,500, you're doing pretty well. Middle game books, instructive books sell better, especially if they get good word of mouth. So that's the way to go. But,
and tactics books.
What's that?
Tactics books seem to sell
Tactics books, little tactical quiz books, things like that do pretty well because they're accessible and easy. They don't put a strain on you. And you feel like you're doing something that'll help you. So those are good ideas too.
Right, but I noticed you did Reassess Your Chess, 402 pages, and you made it $17.95, not $27.95. And I bet your thinking was, I'm not going to remainder this baby. I'm going to sell out my printings, and I'm going to make it affordable for them, less than $20 for all this material, and see what happens.
Well, usually it's actually $19.95 when it came out, but I think most of these books now, you have 200-page books, 150 to 200-page books. They're going for like $27.95. It's starting to really go up there. Chess players are not the wealthiest in the world to begin with. I think that the Endgame book is going to go over the $20 mark, but nothing outrageous. I mean, the most we charge is $24.95, and it's going to be another monster. All these books are at least 400 pages that I write.
Well, no, I know if you do it, people are going to get a lot of bang for their buck. That seems to be a characteristic of what you've done.
That's why I try to give a lot of material, keep the price down as much as possible, and make them feel like they're getting something for their money. And hopefully actually learning something, too, because you can pay $2 for a book, but if you don't learn anything, you just wasted your $2.
Well, that's a good point. Okay, well, vis-a-vis what we're talking about, another email from Michael Anderson. Could you ask Jeremy if he has any plans to release a video DVD companion set to How to Reassess Your Chess? This has long been my, and I suspect many others' dream, video instructional video. I think it would be an absolute smash.
The chess-based ebooks, and he's for them. So I have to look into that, and if the market's good, I'll consider it. And if so many people really like it, I'll do it. But right now, I'm a little stretched out. That's it.
That sounds like
an idea.
No, it sounds like a great idea because I know that you're a good lecturer and teacher, and that you photograph okay, and you have this fan base, and perhaps people apparently they love the DVDs. They like the passive learning. I think. I don't know how good it is, and maybe I'm being old-fashioned because I still sit down and play over games by moving pieces, so I can look at a position.
I prefer a nice book. Yeah. So
right.
Of course, you're talking. There's two different things here. We're talking. There's a DVD where you have the person standing there and doing things, and then you have just the discs that allow you just to play. It's like a book, but you can just look at all the moves on your computer screen, which is not quite the same thing as the DVD. And I'm not really into having the person stand up there and lecture or anything. I find chess a little too dry for that. But I do like the idea of having these things messaged. Because sometimes if you are looking at analysis, on a board it's hopeless. You can't keep going back. You have to reset. It takes forever. But there, if you have it on the screen, you just press a button and you're right back to wherever you want, and it makes it much easier. So that's what I would consider doing.
Okay, well, I bet you could find a producer and backers. Here's another interesting email. It's, again, related. This is from Megasack, ICC member. Dear Mr. Silman, what are your thoughts about the lack of connection between chess and television? Does the thought of gathering together a few GMs and discussing the creation of a chess station cross your mind? I think it would be a great idea. Millions of chess fans around the globe would tune in, but it would take a lot of work. Still, it is something every fan of the game truly wishes there was, and I'm very curious to know your thoughts about this as a professional. Sincerely, Matt.
Well, I guess I'm more negative about the subject than most people. I don't view chess as a big spectator sport. You have to understand that when people watch tennis or golf, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what's going on. Sure, the ball goes over the net or the ball goes in the hole. And sure, there are endless levels about the stuff, which club, what kind of shot is the guy doing. But you don't need to know any of that stuff to kind of get off on the game, just the most basics. But with chess, if you don't have some skill level and you don't really know what you're doing, it's just nothing. You're just staring at something. It's like, so, I don't consider that to be something that's so easily put, in that type of medium. Now, on the other hand, I have seen it done, very well, but that was many years ago. There was one formula that worked, and no one ever did it, which was very strange. It's the only time chess really succeeded on television, and so typical decisions, let's never do that again because it was too successful.
Clue me in. When was this time?
This was the Chess Challenge BBC, where they would have, they added a lot of psychological oomph to it. They would have like 4 players in a small tournament. There's good money. So first off, the public understands money. There's a lot of money at stake. They like that. Then they'd have 2, America, in this case, British guys. So you have your hometown guys you're rooting for. And then they would always have like 2 Russians with me. So you have the evil commies they kind of presented as at that time. So people would kind of be rooting against these 2 grandmasters, from outside of their own country and rooting for their home guys. Then they would play like real tournament games, real match games with each other. And then they would go back in the studio, sit down and pretend they're playing it again, moving, the whole game would take 15, 20 minutes. And then what they would do is they would tape their ideas. So you'd see Nigel Short sitting there looking at looking at his opponent with disgust and thinking what he's going to do. And then his opponent makes a move, and Nigel Short will say something like, the bloody bastard, I didn't see that coming. Things like that, and it adds a lot of humanity. You have to have a little rough talk and everything, so it's kind of exciting. You don't want to have choir boys. Nobody wants to see a bunch of choir boys on TV. That's incredibly dull, too. And so you'd have this major battles, and then the Russian guy would be thinking, this young punk thinks he can beat me, blah, blah, and then he would discuss his ideas like a variation. They'd never go too long, but they'd have it computerized, so the moves, when the guy's thinking in his head about what he's going to do or why not, it just shows the variation quickly so you can follow it. So what happened was it was one of the most popular shows ever on the BBC, even with people that didn't know how to play chess, because they just wanted to watch it to root for their guys and kind of boo the evil ones, So very successful, but nobody can do that. Nobody has ever copied that formula. Don't ask me.
Good question. They did some speed chess challenge for some real money. I think Yasser produced it and narrated it 7-8 years ago, but then it never ran on TV. I don't know if you remember that. They had
the thing with even speed chess is, once again, people that are looking at it, they don't understand it, even if you have a lot of time. And now you're seeing pieces zip by, and nobody has any clue. Even the good players half the time don't know what's going on. And so, I don't see that. Everybody thinks faster time controls is the answer, but no, it's not the answer at all. And so basically, you're taking something that's a very hard sell, and you need to come up with a package that is going to sell it, like the one I just mentioned. But most things aren't going to work. They're going to fail. I mean, it's kind of funny. I mentioned the story, I think, before, but my wife visited me at a tournament when I was playing, which I'm retired now, but and I was on one of the demo boards, and there was a bunch of people in the audience watching. She sat there, and she heard some guy saying, well, it looks like Silman's losing. And so I got up and came down, and she says, well, I hear you're losing. I said, what are you talking about? The guy was like a 1800 player that said that. And I said, what are you talking about? I'm waiting for him to resign. So even an A player half the time, they're looking at these games, so they don't have any idea what's going on. And so how are you going to expect this from the general public, especially the blitz game? And sure, maybe at first it's like trained monkeys. The public goes, wow, look how fast everybody's moving. That's really cool. But very quickly people tire of it. It's no longer teacher new and see it over and over. It's just a one-trick pony. So I don't know. I actually think that we need to recreate the British thing.
I actually think what this fellow has in mind, this is something I've talked about with Pandolfini, and it requires a producer, it requires a cable channel, it requires somebody to believe that it would generate enough viewership so that sponsors will become stiff. What I think he needs, or I'll share this with you and to other people on the air, is some kind of instructional channel about chess, and maybe it would just be at an odd time, like 10 o'clock till 2 in the morning Sunday night or something, but every week, where what you're getting is not these kind of artificial competitions, speed competitions for money, the commies versus the good guys, but literally instruction. When Jeremy Silman comes on and gives an intermediate advanced instruction about the accelerated dragon, and Fred Wilson comes on and does some very basic king and pawn endings, and Bruce Alverson comes on and does the fork tricks using games like Karusek, Schlechter, and Michael Adams. And do you see what I'm saying? Like then, how many people would watch a good presentation from a well-prepared and experienced teacher, and occasionally grandmasters come on and slowly and really carefully and bearing in mind the level of the audience, let's say Joel Benjamin and John Fedorovich comes on and goes through a couple of very important games that are really complex but decided first place of $50,000 last week.
Well, the dyed-in-the-wool chess players would love it, but again...
How many are there? Well, what about even people explaining the most basic instruction, like an hour of post-beginner instruction, an hour of advanced beginner instruction, an hour of genuine intermediate?
As I told you, I don't believe it. I would love to be proven wrong. I would absolutely adore it if I could be proven to be completely incorrect, but I don't believe you'd need to add other things to make it some psychological.
So you're saying you don't think that there's enough to have even a couple, 3-4 hours of instruction?
Oh, you could do that with a cable TV show because a lot's not expected. I mean, and they have every type of thing. You go on TV, at 3 in the morning, and you find some 70-year-old woman, discussing sexual techniques, and that's her show. I mean, I don't know how many people watch it, but if they have that, you could have a chess show. So, there's everything on cable, and so that's quite possible to do. And then if a lot of people, if they find that it has a following, you can, let it grow.
Well, I'm just surprised nobody's really tried it on cable. I mean, in New York, we had one guy doing basically a kind of interview show on Channel 35 Public Access. I was on it, and other times he had Karpov, or he might have Shelby Lyman, or he might have Joel Benjamin, and he did a whole series of them. And a lot of people claim they watched it, but that was it. That was the only one I ever heard of, where somebody did something that ran for an hour on in a big city, and not at 3 in the morning. The show might be on at 8 in the morning Sunday, but it was an accessible time. Did they do anything like that in California?
I think that things that sell, you're going to have some audience, but things that sell, you need some intrigue, you need strong personalities, you need the human element in everything. Chess by itself is not going to be of interest to anybody but the real chess player. We love the game. I look at it, and to me, everything's, thrilling and pulse-pounding, but the average guy just looks at a potato. He's wondering what's wrong with him. So, but when you, again, look at what makes these things sell, when chess was big, it was personality. You had that British show, which I mentioned again, where there was this, internal strife between you and your opponent. They pushed that, the drama of the battle. And, of course, the biggest time was Fischer. Everybody keeps talking about, let's have chess have this milquetoast, wonderful, everybody's real polite and nice. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that, if you want it for the general populace. Fischer, when he was around, he was a complete jerk. He was out of his mind. And yet every American's discussing it. And that was because he had a powerful personality. You need some bad boys. You need people with a lot of energy. And instead, a large part of the chess public actually denounces people like that. They want everybody to walk around and seem very calm and nice. And that's just a gift now. You're shooting yourself in the head. So, I hope I'm wrong. I hope your idea is right, but I don't believe it.
Oh, well, I hope I'm right, too. It might even help my wallet if I get to present on television. One more question, then we'll take a break, and we have some more good questions after that. Now, this is a funny one, Jeremy. I think it's sincere. I completely enjoyed How to Reassess Your Chess and was about to buy Inside the Amateur's Mind when stopped by a friend who said it made no sense to learn how not to think. Could you explain how my friend is wrong and tell me how learning what mistakes lower-rated players like myself make can improve my play? Thank you, Greg Bratton.
Basically, you have a good teacher. The teacher, if you just sit, some teachers will just sit there and go over, some world champion games, and that has nothing to do with you personally. So I don't know what you're going to pick up. But if he says, okay, let's look at your games, let's look at your weaknesses and your problems, and we're going to iron them. Now, not only is that entertaining, and not only do you feel he's actually talking to you and not just reading out some prearranged spiel, but it means something to you. You go, God, I didn't realize I was doing that all the time. Over and over again, I'm making this mistake. And then you can actually improve. And so, when I have a book like The Amateur's Mind, people are looking at what this guy's saying and going, I would have thought that about this position too. And suddenly you're participating in the book, they're talking to you personally, and you're actually going to learn something about your own weaknesses and highs and lows rather than sort of nothing whatsoever. So I think it's really important to be able to,
Well, I figured you would say this because there are typical misconceptions that are shared by the vast majority of advanced beginners through intermediate players. And you and I have taught a lot, so we see again and again and again they all have the absolute same misconceptions. And gosh, I even remember, I don't know if you've ever seen this, and I don't know if it's in The Amateur's Mind, but I've had more than once, like, big tough guy who loved chess who was afraid of and didn't like to be checked. Like, I actually had to get them to internalize that a check was not like a jab in boxing. You ever seen that, Jeremy?
I've seen everything. I had one guy who wouldn't castle.
Really?
He castles, he'd be checkmated on the edge of the board, and so he never castled, and he got checkmated in the middle of the board. And it took me 1 year, literally begging him, until he finally castled. And, of course, he immediately got checkmated on the side of the board, as he always knew he would, but that doesn't matter. Of course, you see every problem and weakness, but that's why you have to figure out the individual's problem, because somebody else's won't help him. And that's why, lessons are really nice if you can afford it, but, the idea of Amateur's Mind is people not only can always, get to a teacher, they can't afford it, and so I tried very hard in that book to address individuals and the typical weaknesses that people have. And hopefully that answers that question.
Well, Mr. Bratton, I think it would be money well spent to buy a copy of The Amateur's Mind. It's quite a lot of bang for your buck. And, Jeremy, we're going to take a brief break now for about 3 or 4 minutes, and I'd like to remind people, if you have questions for Jeremy Silman, email them directly to me, fred@fredwilsonchess.com, and I may read it to Jeremy on the air during the next hour. And we'll be right back in 3 or 4 minutes. Hi, folks. Fred Wilson back with Jeremy Silman. And, Jeremy, we have a nice email from Andy Ansell, who who has one of the finest chess book collections in the United States, and reviews books for Chess Today for Alex Badborin. And he has a couple of interesting questions that really you can speak to. You mentioned it a little bit before. On the economics of chess books, more chess books are being published now than ever before. Many are literally disposable, which leads me to wonder how publishers can make money since the inventory value is close to zero. There are a few classic books, such as your Benko book, which deserve special notice. How well do these books sell, and as an author, how do you feel well compensated for an effort that had to take years? I think you've already told us the Benko book was kind of for you and John Watson and Benko rather than to make a buck. But
yeah, no, when I got into the project, I knew I was going to lose a lot of money. But I always wanted to do that. It was something I had never done before. And so it was basically just very much for me. And also I really respect Benko. And I wanted to do something that would, let people realize how important, chess really was. And, of course, it won, I think it's the only book to have won the three main prizes. The BBC, the British Chess Magazine book of the American one, and also the Chess Cafe. It won all of those. But it still didn't sell well. I mean, it sold okay, but, if we end up selling over its life 3,000 copies, 4,000 would be the most, and that's it. 3,000 would really be great, but maybe only two. And so, it doesn't sell great. You're not going to make money, and that's all there is to it with a book like that. I don't think any book on chess is, but it was worth it. I enjoyed it.
Well, I understand. You did something you're proud of. A long time ago, I did a picture history of chess, and I didn't make much money with that, and it belongs to Dover, but that went through 8,000 copies sold in 3 printings. So
I think most people have that in their library, don't they?
I
have it staring at me in my bookshelf.
I think it sold well enough so that it's not rare, but it was not printed a lot of copies. I know the exact figure. It's 8,000 and 3.
8,000 is a great number for a chess book.
Right. So nowadays it goes for about $30, $35 on eBay, or from my store. But I've only got one copy of my own. So, and yes, folks, a signed copy is a little more scarce than an unsigned. At any rate, here's another question from Andy. Book reviews. With all the books out there are many sites and places that offer reviews. As you know, I review for Chess Today, but other sites have multiple reviewers of various qualities, such as Chess Cafe, Seaguard, Chessville, to name a few, plus Amazon. While investment companies are criticized and fined for always posting positive reviews, some reviewers never have seen a bad book. See John Knudsen. But many reviews seem to unduly influence book sales and popularity. Do you feel, with the web, more of these reviewers need to be reviewed themselves, and that book buyers need to be more alert to these reviews?
Well, I think that just like with movies, with movie reviewers, you find a guy that you pretty much have similar tastes and trust, but it's just a personal thing quite often with movies. So I just noticed how Ebert mentioned the movie that was movie of the year, and then another famous reviewer called it the worst movie. So that kind of tells you something about how right on these things are. Same thing with chess book reviews sometimes. Of course, sometimes a book just is trash one way or the other. I know my own site, we have several reviews, and sometimes the guy really like it, somebody else won't like it. And, we're not afraid to trash a book if it really deserves it. So I really liked Ansel's comment, by the way, about disposable books and the whole idea of so many books coming out. It really is amazing the amount of books they're pouring. And I think the reason is that you have many writers, and they're not making a ton of money on one book, so they need to write 4 or 5 a year if they're going to get by. And so you have all these guys just writing that many books. Of course, they're going to start pouring them.
Well, John Nunn also addresses that in his Chess Publishing in the Bradford story, the last essay in Grandmaster Chess Move by Move, which I actually overall liked the book. I disagree with his trashing Irving Turnham, and I disagree with his blaming virtually everything in the poor economics of professional chess on the fact that the Eastern European and the Soviet grandmasters were unleashed on the world, and this lowered the going rate for grandmaster appearances. But, he complains about that, Jeremy, in the book. But, of course, when the slave state ceases to exist, the slave
Yeah, it's very difficult. These people have trouble paying their rent. And, that's always something I've been trying to explain when it comes to, last round games and whatnot. But we can get into that later if you want. But one thing with book reviews, let me finish up this one thought. I've had the one problem you have, and one reason some people are afraid to give a negative book review, are there repercussions. Not only do fans of the book, if you trash it, start writing you endless bits of hate mail, and I get a lot, but the writer himself comes at you. So, for example, I attacked one of the, the Informator books, not the Informant itself, but, their opening book.
One of the, in the opening series. The monograph.
The monograph. Thing. Oh, the ECO.
One of the ECO volumes.
Yeah, but they had, the first one was great. The second one just had, weaker players, and it wasn't nearly as good. So they basically slacked off on the quality. And so I criticized it. Said, the first one's good, but the second one's a waste of money. And I got Matanovic wrote a letter at the time demanding I be banned and shot and, imprisoned, and he just went berserk. So that was not a pleasure. And then just recently, I actually thought I was kind of nice to a book, and I knew it was terrible, but I tried to show some good points to it, and I actually got attacked for not ripping into the guy enough.
Why was that?
But unfortunately, that particular book, the author didn't see it the way he thought I trashed him. And by the way, the book deserved to be trashed.
What was the book?
It's Black is Still Okay or something.
Oh, that's a terrible book.
Yeah, of course. And so,
nobody's attacked me.
What's that?
I'm saying Jeremy is a joke. No one's attacked me, and I trashed that. I thought it was an awful book. And I thought it was not really edited at all, because it sounds like...
The person that really attacked me was a Dorian. I got a multi-page bit of hate screed that was unbelievable, almost threatening to physically assault me. I mean, he just went berserk.
Jeremy, he's a little guy. He's not going to beat you up.
I'm not too worried about that, but what upset me was not so much any threats he made or any names he called me, and there were plenty. What upset me was I really upset the guy, because I have tremendous respect for him. He's a great player. And so upsetting him so much, it's very difficult when you write a review that's negative, and you know that the author is not going to be too happy. So I owe it to the reader to be honest, but at the same point, crushing a fellow professional, it's a little painful, and I felt really bad for Dorian that I've hurt him like that. It was not a happy moment. But, you have to kind of suck it up. When you write a review, you have to be honest. My problem is there are a lot of reviewers that not only say everything's good just because they want the free books, but they also aren't good enough to know if something's good. And so they're saying all this rubbish that has nothing to do about, anything about the book. They don't understand the subject themselves. So, it's very difficult. Again, I think you really need to find one or two chess pros you really respect and stick with them. And the best example, in a way, is the whole Amazon thing. And I am really down on Amazon, and even considered some lawsuits and things, but other people have thought that too. They have too much money to tackle them. And what they do is they allow these reviews to be posted of books, not just chess books, but all their books. But they're reviews by people that are nameless. Half the time, it's one person writing 20 or 30 different names over and over again, and they're just vicious, lambasts of these books. And almost in the vast majority of cases, the reviews realize the person never even read the book. They just don't like the person, don't like the title, whatever the case may be, and they attack these people. And you can go anywhere now and just reviews like that. And to me, that's just libelous. I mean, you have some poor guy that wrote a book and worked really hard, and then you get some jerk that, sits there and just slams it, gets his friends to slam it, and does it himself. He just sits there, obviously doesn't have a life, and writes tons of negative news. So those are just total crap and should be ignored.
Don't you think, or isn't it our hope, your hope and my hope, that soon, if not already, people realize they can't trust reviews they read on Amazon? Just like you can't trust what you read in Wikipedia?
I sure would hope that people will realize that. Those aren't reviews, they're just, total garbage, not worth anything. And the positive ones, too. You have, it's funny, because sometimes you'll get somebody that has a competing book, so he'll write tons of negative reviews and have his friends do it. Then the author will get all their friends to write. So even if it's positive and negative, it's bullshit. I mean, why read something like that? It's not there's no honesty to it. So find a couple reviewers with them who do well.
Well, no, I agree. And with reviewers you trust, I mean, generally I like like Carson Hansen on Chess Cafe. Although sometimes I think he's a little severe, and even occasionally a book I didn't like, I thought was kind of lazily put together. The Roy Lopez Explained by Gary Lane. He liked it, but I felt that since Lane completely ignores all possibilities from what we call the Chigorin defense, he just wants white to play d4 without h3 in the absolute main line of the Roy Lopez, that he's able to ignore like tons of the games and theory of all the great players. And basically his training game is the game that Hydra beat Michael Adams. So that's like, I thought, well, this is kind of like it. Carson Hansen says, excellent overview for inexperienced players with the Roy Lopez. So even there, it's like, generally I agree with Carson Hansen. I think he's even more severe than I am. Here, I thought he was being nice. But, sometimes I've been nice and you've been nice. So I think...
You're never going to find a reviewer that's always going to agree with you. So,
Also,
I might add, there's another great instance. Remember this book by Hans Berliner?
Oh, my God, the system.
The D4 won by he says D4 wins by force.
Was there anyone who liked that book?
Yeah, well, what happened is I crushed it. Like I said, this is just an outrageously bad book. And, it blew me away. And I was totally attacked by all the postal people. In fact, I got some people that said they'll sue me if I even try to talk to them again because I was so vicious about this book. So
that's funny because it's a sad book. It's so bad that he was such a good player and it's such a crappy book.
Yeah, I didn't know they defended him because he's kind of a legend, and it's hard if one of your heroes goes berserk like that. So it's being a book reviewer is not all.
I think the reason I slammed that book, I just think I call it saddened by it. I think they don't go after me because I'm not up there 24 hours a day. Like a review on your website is up there forever. So they can blunder into it 6 months later and say, oh my God, Jeremy's attacked my favorite author,
Yeah, no, I have an index of thousands of indexed there, so you can check out a lot of them. They're never taken down.
But I have to tell you, I was astonished by that Black is Still.
Yeah, astonished is a good word. Yeah, I couldn't believe my eyes.
I couldn't believe Batford published it, frankly.
Actually, that was Gambit, wasn't it?
No, it was not Gambit. I do not think it was Gambit. It's hard to imagine Nunn, Burgess, and Chandler letting that thing go through because it's so badly written. I
Gambit.
I'm looking
I
at.
may be wrong.
I really. Well, I certainly don't. My highest accolade is I'm going to keep my review copy. I certainly don't have a review copy of that. That's really.
Yeah, I had to box. I had so many chess books. I had to start boxing them. Like my walls are covered with thousands of books. And undoubtedly, I'm sure I must have boxed that particular book myself. But I don't know where it is.
Well, not Jeremy. Remember,
whoever did it. But
Right.
It is awful. Do not buy that book.
I wanted to point out what Nunn's talking about chess book publishing is he feels the only way for a publisher to make a go as a chess book publisher is to develop a big backlist. So and he gave a lot of statistics to try and prove that the typical chess book maybe makes the publisher in its first printing £2,000+ profit after everything is paid for. So the only way to make money is to have a lot of books out there and to keep adding to that list of books and to have them all at least do the 4,000 copy sale, not the 3, and the 5 would be better. And then finally, if you become known for having this big list of chess books and a big backlist, then the bookstores will order a few more from you, like, okay, let's order this, and this, because we always sell out Gambit books. And so I think that one reason we're seeing this explosion is that it's certainly from Gambit. They're coming out with a book every 3 or 4 weeks, it seems to me, is that they really believe, and so far, by and large, they've come out with really quality books. I will say that for Gambit.
No,
the bigger their list of stuff in print for sale, the better the entire list will do. I think that's their approach.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, people seem to think that there's 2 misconceptions. One, they think that if you're a writer, be it chess or anything else, you're rich. Of course, completely insane. Nothing could be further from.
Folks, it's not true.
Yeah, and patently absurd. Right, it makes money. Unless, of course, if you're on the Oprah book of the month club, that's a different matter. But the other thing is that publishing companies make a lot of money because a lot of them are barely getting by. It's very hard to come by money, and you do need to just take little profits with each book. If you make a couple dollars a book, you're doing great. You know, you have to pay proofers, you have to pay the writer, you're only getting 50% or something when you send these things to a bookstore. To print the books costs a fortune. To ship the books costs a fortune. You know, it whittles away very quickly. With my company, we're not a chess book publisher. We just do a few chess books, but we put out mainly books on film and, directing, all areas of Hollywood.
Speaking of books on film, I haven't seen it, and I'm hoping to get a copy soon. Have you seen this new book by Bob Bastella on chess, everything you want to know ever about chess in the movies?
I reviewed it, yeah.
Oh, okay. Tell us what you thought of it, because I'm actually trying to get him on my show if he's listening.
Well, you know what he did? For those of you that have these movie review books, by Malton or Ebert and all these things, they're big, oversized paperback books that have thousands of reviews. And so he copied that format, which I think was a good idea, and just stuck, an enormous amount of movies in there. But, of course, and by the way, a lot of people always talk about where's chess in movies and whatnot, so it's very useful for that purpose. But the problem is, of course, he's also adding movies where you just see a chessboard somewhere and that's it. So any kind of mention or showing of chess, and he's kind of giving them. They're not really chess movies. Of course, he's giving the movies that are chess movies, but so a lot of the movies really have. It's like saying, there's a couch, so it's a couch movie. I mean, there's a couch everywhere, somewhere. Or a car, there's a chessboard. It's no big deal. So, but he did a service. It's nobody else had ever done that before.
Kind of does. I mean, now just speaking to you, you publish books on film. You obviously know a lot about film and movies. What are your favorite chess movies? You must have seen most of the real chess movies. I mean,
a lot of the time.
I like The Royal Game with Kurt Jurgens, but let me ask you, what do you think?
The Kurt Jurgens, of course, there's the old classic, one that everybody's seen, and the talent move with Capablanca and Marshall and all these. So you can easily, and that's a lot of fun just to see these guys walking around.
Oh, the Moscow 1925 tournament.
Yeah. Well, it's actually Chess Fever.
Chess Fever. Okay.
Yeah, Chess Fever about this guy that's obsessed by chess, and his girlfriend's going to dump him, and she decides that she's going to kill herself or something. She's walking the streets because he just loves chess more than her, and she runs in just when she's going to do herself in, she runs into some dashing guy, and it's Capablanca, the real Capablanca, who says, "You have to come with me," and he takes her to a chess tournament where she becomes a chess fanatic too. But it's very, it's a lot of fun. The other chess movies, most of them, are disappointing. For example, I did they hire people sometimes. Sometimes they won't hire anybody to try to make the things realistic, and that's embarrassing. But even when they do, they usually just cut it up and make the guy that they hired look like an idiot. So in my case, I did the Harry Potter, the first film, and I handed in like an 80-page step-by-step of how to create the position, the moves, the logic, something for a website, how you can have a contest, because it's actually made faster. A computer would get it wrong because it's a logic problem, because Harry has to survive. But what happened was, when it came out, they just cut the whole position up and gave one move, and it was nonsensical. So they do that all the time, and it's very depressing. I think the greatest chess show, TV or movie of all time, is a TV series, an hour-long series called Lex, which is a co-German-Canadian production science fiction story, and the episode which you can buy is called The Game. And the whole show is a chess game from a world championship. They go over every move and describe the strategy between in this Le Bourdonnais-McDonald match game.
Wow. And this is a Canadian science fiction TV series called Lex? Or is it a single?
Lex was a 5-mile-long living dragonfly spaceship, and the captain was an idiot who looked for, would go from planet to planet looking for women. This woman was half reptilian, and there was a dead man they'd bring to life once in a while to kill tons of people. But it was one of these quirky shows. But the chess scene there is unbelievable. You have the dead man playing death, and the chess pieces are actually like the heads of the characters screaming at each other and discussing the strategies, and it's an amazing, amazing show. Beautifully done. Chess players will go crazy over it.
Did you happen to notice?
Comes close.
It sounds like they used somebody who knew what he. They sound like they used some master strength player as a composer.
They had to use somebody because they found this real game, and of course they pretended they were playing it, and I'm telling you, every move was ascribed to strategy. They didn't miss one move, along with jeering, and whenever a capture happened, they would, like, some piece would stand over one of the heads as human, and like an axe would come down, and then the head explodes with brain tissue flying everywhere, very violent.
Ooh, ooh. Well, that sounds like, do you remember that awful, long time ago there was a competitor to Chessmaster 1, Chessmaster 2, that was some kind of chess thing for kids, and whenever a piece was captured, the knight would lop off the cartoon head of the character of the piece it captured. And it was like 10 or 12 years ago, but it was really big. And all
I haven't seen that, but they kind of did that, except when they did that here, they did it with real head.
Oh, okay. So this is worse.
Yeah, now to me, by the way, the best, I think the film you mentioned, it's called Brainwashed.
Yeah, Brainwashed, which it's a version.
That's based on Stefan Zweig novella, The Royal Game.
And Kurt Jurgens plays the protagonist, and I thought he was
and Claire
really
Bloom
good.
is in it too, so really good cast. Kurt Jurgens, Claire Bloom, English subtitles, German film. That's probably the best chess movie of all time. It's realistically done, and it's really about a man's descent into madness and the war years more than chess, but chess is a major part of the whole thing. It's the spine of the. But that's hard, that's hard to find sometimes.
The other one, it's not as good a movie, but I thought that chess was amazingly realistic. You must know that. I think you would know this. It's called Return from the Ashes. It stars Maximilian Schell, Eva Marie Saint. It was made in 1962. And he plays a kind of sleazy chess master in pre-Nazi, pre-war Europe, marries a wealthy Parisian Jewish woman, and the Nazis march into Paris, and he betrays her.
Or did he kind of rush into the room at one point screaming that he drew some international master?
Yes. And
yeah, it's funny, because I actually, as a kid, I tuned in, and it was on TV, and I've been in the middle of it, and I had no idea what it was, and I've always wondered what it was ever since, and you're the first person to give me
the movie is Return from the Ashes. You cannot get it on video. You have to, somehow, folks, acquire a bootleg video of it. You get my drift, Jeremy?
Yeah, no, I'd love to get a copy.
And it has Samantha Eggar is in it too. So it's a real movie. She comes in, his wife to be comes into a chess club and wants to know if he plays speed chess. She calls it lightning chess. He says yes. They play a blitz game. He destroys her. He completely moves the pieces and hits the clock as though he himself was really a chess player. And when she comes in, he's reading a magazine and playing over moves from a game. I mean,
they mention big names. They mention, real players.
Right. And he has a great line. He calls his wife when he's trying to set up to murder her, and he calls her over the phone, and she says, "Oh, my dear, it was very, very difficult." And he says, "Oh, Max, what happened?" He says, "Well, he was very, very clever, but I was brilliant." That's a good line.
I'm going to hunt it down. So
you'll have to hunt it down
for the last 20-odd years. So.
And just somehow legally acquire the non-existent bootlegs that are out there. All right.
So any other questions?
Oh, yeah. What are your favorite books that have come out within the last year and a half? And you've answered Chess for Zebras as one. But are there any others you really like? I mean, I like
Chess Sins by the same author. I like Seven Deadly Chess Sins by Rowson.
Okay. Did you like
a book on chess psychology?
Okay. Did you like How to Beat 1v4 by Rizzetano?
Yeah, I'm going to avoid opening books because there's so many. So that's a really good book. There's endless amount of really good opening books, but I'm going to avoid those because we can just go on and on and on. Any middle game books come to mind? By the way, there's a Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual. That's a really good book. There's a couple, but about Endgames, you have Fundamental Chess Endings, which is a fantastic book, and Dvoretsky's. But again, when I say good, it has all this great stuff, but to me, they're more reference works. Nobody's going to really sit there and go through those things. It's too daunting. So, but they're very good. If you want a top book, in your shelf, I mean, you need to look things up, or if you're looking for one basic thing you want to study, those are magnificent. Middle game books, Dvoretsky's books are advanced, the middle games are excellent.
Well, I was also terms of the historical books that don't sell. How did you like this book about James Leonard by Hilbert?
I reviewed that actually last month. I really enjoyed that book. I mean, of course, the funny part, and there's a couple ways of looking at it. One, you say, who in the hell is James Leonard? You have a guy from the 1800s who nobody has heard of until recently, who wasn't really that good. I mean, he was like one of the better players in the city eventually. And they're going to go over his life in detail. So, from that point of view, it's of absolutely no interest to anybody. On the other hand, the book was magnificently written. I mean, he really did a tremendous job of finding information. And the real reason to get a book like that is it gives you a feel for the times.
Well, it describes the New York City, Philadelphia chess community about 1855 to 1862. And
they hit the pride and blah. I mean, it didn't strike me that he was that strong a player. But he died very young, of course, in the Civil War.
You put your finger on it. I haven't really reviewed it. I just told people it's really, really well done. And my concern was how good was Leonard. So I went through a bunch of the games. He was a gifted blindfold player. Civil War. The poor fool joined. Did the patriotic. I know that. He was not Morphy at 21.
No, of course not. So if you only want to get that book, not for the chess and not for the games. I mean, it's fun that chess is in it because you like chess. You get the book because you really will get a better feel for the times, what the clubs are like. The descriptions of clubs are magnificent in that. And I think a lot of people would have no interest in it, especially non-chess players, when they're describing the clubs. Personally, it really took me back to those years. So I really enjoyed the book. But a lot of Hilbert's books are like that, which just open up the whole period of time to you, and you learn a lot about, just history, not just chess history, and they're really worthwhile if you have an interest in that type of thing. The one book of Hilbert's I didn't like was Young Marshall.
How come?
I
thought he came up with some really good unknown games.
The problem was Young Marshall. First off, Marshall was not a very interesting guy. He didn't seem to.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't a particularly interesting guy personally, so that took a bit away from it. Secondly, somehow the color didn't jump up. There wasn't as much stuff that brought those times to life to me. And finally, I felt that he looked like he may have been. Most of the games that they give are games where he was like a C, B, or A player. The games are not very good at all. They're terrible games. And then later he gets a little better, but he was still pretty bad at that point before he, became the real Marshall that we know of. So I didn't.
There's about a half dozen great games in that book that did not make it into any other Marshall book, including Salter. And there are also a bunch of good games he gets crushed by some of the stronger Americans. There was one guy, I can't remember his name, it's sort of a German name. Marshall lost 8 games against, and the guy died in 1906 with tuberculosis in Europe. I'm trying to remember his name. He's one of the early American champions. Between Showalter, Hodges, and that group, and I just can't remember his name, but it had a kind of German-type last name. And this guy owns Marshall, okay? And I liked Young Marshall. I sort of felt there was some good stuff in it, and there was some atrocious games. But Jeremy, remember, atrocious games are good for teaching.
Yeah, but to the games, to me, I'm not getting these books for the games. None of these books am I getting for the games. They could just as well not have the games. I'm getting them because they're interesting reads, they have energy, and they teach me a lot about history in general. And Marshall didn't do that, the Young Marshall. While Hilbert's other books do that magnificently, really skilled guy. So he kind of dropped the ball in my view. But if you're after the games, it's a different matter. But I couldn't care less about the games.
I think there are a few games. I'll have to dig them out and email them to you that he played that are kind of unknown masterpieces. That he left out of his book, which Reinfeldt and him wrote together. Basically, Reinfeldt 40 years later, where he didn't.
If you're looking for a book about Marshall's life, by the way, the book you want to get is Frank Marshall, U.S. Champion by Soltis.
One of the great books. I completely
That's a fantastic
agree.
book.
That's a fantastic book.
Really good book. Now you're spending your money on something else. It's not cheap, but it's worth getting.
It's $42 hardcover McFarlane. I'm not selling it, folks. Go find it somewhere. It's one of the best biographical game collections ever written. Would you agree with that, Jeremy?
Very good. Yeah, I really loved it. So that's if I had to choose between the two, it's a no-brainer.
Oh yeah. I just thought Young Marshall dug up some funny games and pointed out Marshall's problem with matches. He had a lot of trouble with matches against Americans people have never heard of.
He never was good at matches. He tended to...
Right. How do you feel about that new book about Morphy? I think it's Valerie Bain.
I haven't read it. I have no idea whatsoever.
Okay.
Try another.
Try another. The book I actually, by and large, enjoyed very much, the new book on the LeBoy-McDonald match by Untitled.
Fantastic book.
Fantastic.
People don't realize, most people don't even know who those guys are. And Marshall himself at one point said that the games in that match were the greatest games of all time. Those are the games he studied to get good, and he felt that no one would ever be able to better the quality of those games. Of course, that wasn't the case, but when you look at those games in that match, it's mind-numbing. In fact, the match was so long and so intense that basically killed both players. Both died short, not too long afterward. And it's interesting because McDonald would take forever on this. A lot of people don't realize he sat there something an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. There were no clocks. And LeBoy was a professional, so what he did was he would go into another room and play quick chess for money, waiting for his opponent to make a move. And then he'd come back and, make some quick move and then go back and try to play for money again with other people. And he easily won this match, or this series of matches against this guy. He was a fantastic player, a lot of modern concepts, but also the stuff about his life and everything, very interesting. So it's an excellent book.
Oh, absolutely. And it's too bad James Leonard didn't know LeBoy-McDonald's trick because, as you'll recall, Leonard played the champion of Philadelphia. The one time he left New York City to play a chess match in 1861, and he's getting way ahead in the match, and his opponent starts to go into 2-hour things. And the games are taking 8 to 10 hours. And there's one letter surviving from Leonard, and he says you have no idea what an ordeal it is to have to sit motionless while a man thinks for 90 minutes over a trivial move. And it's just too bad he didn't know what LeBoy did. Or he was too young a gentleman to think of just getting up and having a cup of coffee and flirting with somebody.
But that happened all the time. There were cases. I think was it Morphy had the thing where some opponent of his, maybe it was Bird, took like 4 or 5 hours or some outrageous amount of time on a move, which was common. He'd take a long time, but this time he took really a long time. And finally, Morphy was a gentleman, would sit there and just kind of looked at them and said something like, what's going on? And the guy said, oh, it's my move? Which, problem if you don't have plots. I think other books, if you like history, of course, the Great Predecessor series are excellent. I mean, really good introductions to all this stuff. A lot of fun. A really interesting book, Amos Byrne, which is several thousand pages. So it's like 900 something pages.
Seems like it's several thousand pages.
Yeah.
Our friend John Watson doesn't like that book, but all the rest of us do. And
most people, Byrne is not a very interesting fellow in many ways, and his play was incredibly boring. But again, I liked the book because of the times and talks about the other players. So it's quite interesting. But on the other hand, it costs a fortune, and it's a monster. So it's not for everybody. They're not going to sell a lot of that. So that was another labor of love. Somebody put a lot of effort into that. I think other books that are worth getting, not opening books again, is Russians versus Fisher. It's a fantastic book that came out with a new version. Really good. Talks about all the KGB files and, people, Spassky and Simonov and all those guys sitting in meetings being threatened by the KGB. And Simonov, when he lost, they actually on purpose and took his apartment away, his car, whipped him out of the country. I mean, when you lose, it's serious stuff. So that's another pretty good book. What else do we have? I can't think of this. Tons of really good books out.
Oh, no, there's
too many books to remember.
Quite a few. I was going to say not only the Russians versus Fisher, but how about the new book, Neidorff, His Life and Game?
That's very good, too. I wish that was a hardcover. They could have done a lot more with it. The production value isn't great. But
the notes really by Neidorff himself are the best thing in the book. He was actually a very good annotator.
Yeah. Well, Neidorff, they needed to do more stuff talking about Neidorff's personality. They did a little bit, but they didn't do enough because Neidorff was an amazing character. Speaking of crazy characters in chess, we needed more like Neidorff. I was lucky enough to meet Neidorff and play him when I was a kid. I guess I was 19 or 20. And I remember when I was playing this guy, I was just staring at him. My clock was ticking. I had about an equal position. It turned out that he had the same position 45 years earlier or something. Really crazy. And just kind of flip out of my mind and reach out and hang everything. You know, I mean, it freaked me out. And afterwards, he just put his arm around me, and, you know, was very kind. And, you know, and then whenever he played a game, he'd rush over to me, and how am I doing? How am I doing? He would to people. Of course, he knew how he was doing, but you know, he had to ask. And in the Benko book, we have a lot of stories of Najdorf fist fights with Reshevsky, you know, and just all sorts of crazy things. Najdorf was an amazing person. So definitely a book worth getting.
No, absolutely. I mean, my one Najdorf story is he shows up in New York, I would guess about 1968, 69, and plays in the Manhattan Chess Club Rapid tournament. And it was actually pretty strong. And he drew one game. He wiped everybody out, and he drew with one young guy, me. And he was so angry. He was so angry, he demanded to play another game right then and there again. And we were in the middle of the game, swear to God, folks, I still had an even position, some kind of, I think I really super chickened that was playing a college system against him. I drew him with black in the real game. And I think it was Oscar Friedman, who at that time was the Russian ex-wrestler who was managing Manhattan Chess Club, actually brushed the pieces away. He could do that with it. So we have to finish the tournament. We have 16 players here, blah, 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 blah. And made us not play the second game. I came in third in that Rapids. It may have been the best chess night I ever had in my life, even though it was a speed tournament, because it had all kinds of people, something like Najdorf, Benko, Zuckerman, Hoffman, a bunch of other guys, and Fred. Huh?
Living in New York had its good points.
Yeah, it had its good points. And
you get to meet all these types of people. You know, the West Coast and stuff is very rare for us to run by these days, so you're fortunate.
But that's my one Najdorf story, and so I have a...
Well, you got to play him. So that's
I got to play him, and it was kind of funny because I actually remember sitting down and saying, what the hell, and play my best, because he had just wiped the floor with about like 6, 7 guys in a row, including Zuckerman and Benko and somebody else. And, you know, now it's my turn, you know, like go to the gallows. But the great thing about chess, Jeremy, is it's not your life. It's just a game. You can finally get over it. You can still have some fun.
More questions. Any more questions?
More questions from Z. Zoran just came through. Everyone I know always lists Jeremy Silman as one of their favorite authors. Is there any chance you'll write another book on the Dutch defense? Also, are there any good books out there on the Fianchetto King's Indian?
There is a good book on Fianchetto King. What the title is eludes me right now, but there's quite a good book out on it. I mean, nothing, I don't know, maybe a couple of years old.
I think Colin McMahon wrote one on the Fianchetto King. I think he means G3 against the King's Indian, don't you?
Yeah. Here it is, King's Indian Grunfeld Fianchetto Lines by Janigava.
Right, and that's a Gambit book.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a very good book. So that's probably the best book on that subject out there right now. As for me writing opening books, never again. There's just too many games. There's too much stuff. You know, it's just an enormous job, and again, it doesn't pay. So I won't do that again. And there are people that are, you know, far better at the opening than me. So, you know, I'm not qualified to write these openings.
Oh, okay. Because I would say I had a question. And I just came across it. I wrote it down from my friend Dave Spiegel in the store earlier. What is the best current book or the best couple of books on the Accelerated Dragon? He asked me to ask you that specifically because I know you wrote a good one with John Donaldson.
I don't think there's anything new. I mean, there was a book that came out right afterward by, what's that other book on the Accelerated?
Peterson or Carsten Hansen himself or one of those guys?
Yeah, I don't know the title, but there was a very good book that came out just a few months after the second edition of our book on the Accelerated Dragon, the one by myself and Donaldson. So that was useful for them because they were able to use ours to, you know, fix things up. But, you know, some of their stuff didn't cover certain things we did and some of it as well and vice versa. So those are still, even though those are several years old, those are still the best books on that particular opening. I don't think there's anything really in-depth and new on that. And probably the reason for that is that, you know, the Roxy bind is kind of, you know, isn't something that Black looks forward to.
Oh my God, I'm getting senile. I just realized the new Albert, Genji, and Perlstein book.
That's I believe it or not, I never got that. I never saw it. So
that recommends the Accelerated Dragon. And Perlstein was on my show, and he said he's come up with ideas for fighting the Maroxy bind, although it's a tough way it's very tough for Black to try and generate winning chances against that. He admits that.
Yeah, no, it's very hard for blacks to generate winning chances. That's the problem. So it's, I think there's so many more dynamics, so many inlines that a lot of people tend towards those books. But if you want to play the accelerated, yeah, that sounds like a good book. I mean, Gigi Hashvili is one of the great experts on that one. So that sounds good. I'd love to get a copy myself. Thanks.
I will tell Lev. He didn't send you a review copy. It was an oversight. And, okay, two more questions before we call it a night. Who is your favorite player? Not the strongest player of all time.
Now, or?
Well, let's make it a double. Of all time and alive now, which might be two different answers.
I think that, of all time, I would probably have to say Lasker.
Terrific! Oh, great!
Yeah. He's an amazing player, incredibly strong, and but a very interesting guy, and I wish there was more written about him. They really haven't done enough for Lasker.
Jeremy, good news! Andy Soltis has just written a book called Why Lasker Matters, with 100 annotated games. It's coming out from Batchford.
I'm glad somebody did it, because I was wondering why nobody did.
No, Andy
Lasker's a fantastic guy. If you have the chance to study Lasker, you should do it, but there's just mental toughness for you. This guy was amazing. So that's my favorite player of all time. Of course, I grew up studying Alekhine games and whatnot, but I got an appreciation for Lasker, much later, and now I just think he's better than anybody. But and as for modern players that are active now, probably a Nunn. Just because not only is he a fantastic player, but he's a really nice, and a lot of the guys are a little testy sometimes. Some of the grandmasters he whacked out. I mean, never heard of the games, but and all these people are egotistical, weird, And so somebody like a Nunn, a very nice man who was at the top of a very strong player too. So, and of course, I'm not going to mention the American players I'm friends with. We can, all these guys are very nice guys. But as far as that, we'll stick with the Nunn. I think a lot of you must be a Nunn fans, right?
Absolutely. I did a shorter show with him. He was very engaging, very forthright, tried to answer questions honestly and carefully. I didn't know him from a hole in the wall, but I felt we had a really nice conversation over 40 minutes or so. And my impression was totally, really a genuine human being. And he's trying to communicate perhaps with people who can't quite see everything in chess he can, because he's right there in the thick of the battle, let's say, for the World Championship. And he would even talk about things like stamina is so important. Like, whenever I'm not at a tournament, I go to the gym every day. And I'm wondering, hey, does anybody hear this? Like, the Palov's in shape, Anand's in shape. Kasparov used to run 3 miles a day. It's like, this is almost like a sport, Jeremy, chess. I mean, if you're not
in shape. In shape. No, if you play a long game or a long tournament and you're not in good condition, just crash. That's why, all those chess players are like Greek gods, each one of us is.
Well, I run 3 miles 4 or 5 times a week, but I wouldn't say I'm a Greek god anymore, or ever was. Okay, prognosticate. Aren't you in or around San Diego yourself?
I'm close, yeah.
Oh, wait, there's the U.S. Championship in San Diego, right?
Yeah.
Are you actually going to be doing any lecturing or commentating at that?
No, I don't really. I almost never give lectures or commentary on anything anymore. Various reasons for it. I mean, it's funny. If I go a couple times a year, I do a scholastic event, and I go there, but I have to be very contained and be careful of what I say, and so that's one thing. But it's not a tremendous amount of fun because I can't really let loose. And also, scholastic players are not very good, so you can't really teach them that much. So I always have this feeling like I'm guilty if I don't teach somebody something. And so it's but I do that a couple times a year. The only other lectures I do once in a while, I'll do like an hour or two, a couple hours at the American Open every year, and that's about it. And even then, I don't know how long they'll even keep me around because I kind of go berserk. I mean, last time I did a lecture there, I'm trying to explain this concept. There's a couple hundred people in the room, and I'm trying to explain the concept of, if you see a threat, most people, they see a threat, and they immediately go, I have to guard the threat. And I'm trying to teach my own students, and also during the lecture, that most threats are garbage, and so you have to actually train yourself in a certain mental place where you have a habit. Whenever you see an enemy threat, the first thing you think is, immediately go there. Instead of saying, I have to guard the threat, which is what everybody thinks, You just immediately put it down and say, let's see if it's real. And that's very important. And then I kind of incited the crowd, got everybody, really into it, and I had everybody repeating, hundreds of people at once. I say, what do you do when you see a threat? What do you say? And everybody,
God, I wish I could do that in my children's classes. But you've struck a chord with me, because just today I was saying, and so when they make a threat, I think all of you in this room think they're going to carry it out immediately. They're going to take my bishop. I must retreat it, as though they can move twice in a row. Time stops. They can't move. They can't touch your bishop. It's your move. Look and see if you can make a bigger threat. Always first look and see if you can make a bigger threat. But I can't have them screaming BS, Jeremy. But boy, would I like to.
The thing is, it's funny because you can have, you could give other words, but the fact is it doesn't stick with you. And if you actually if you say and train yourself, I mean, serious. If you train yourself to look at a threat and say that right off, it actually makes a very profound and strong psychological inference on you. And you actually start looking at the guy's threats with disdain rather than terror, which just about everybody does. So, it's a device that really helps you, get over that.
Well, Jeremy, I think in my next adult lecture that we videotape that I try and market, I will use that word. I hope Tony hasn't cut us off the air already. Have you, Tony? Good. And I hope my adults won't march out, or if I market the video, I won't be known as a pornographer. But I think you're making it a very, very good point. And actually, on that point about how most threats are BS, I can't bring myself to say it. Most threats are bullshit. We're going to end this interview, but Jeremy, please promise to come back, because I enjoyed this very much.